Okay, so yeah, like Rosa said, I'm Alex. I'm one of the co-founders of Playbook. Been working on this for just about 4 years now, and so I'm really excited to have you all here and show you this next thing that we're all working on and launching. So first of all, thank you so much for everyone who supported us. Thanks Kevin, Hannah, Sarah at Ground Floor, and Rosa for helping put this whole thing together. This is super smooth, so thank you. First of all, I wanted to just kind of like get a check on who all is here. I know we have some developers, we have some non-developers. So first of all, raise your hand if you are a developer. Cool, keep your hands up if you've been developing for 2 or more years. And then keep them up for 5 years. Wow, okay, cool. And then another kind of just pulse check. Raise your hand if you either work in the creative industry or if you have kind of like a creative side hobby, like photography or design. Cool, all right, well, super pleased to have you all here. The last thing to say, I guess, before I kick off is that I would love for this to be kind of like interactive. I'm gonna talk for a little bit about what Playbook is. I'll talk for a little bit about what our plugin system is and how you can use it and why that's exciting. And then at the end, we'll go into like actual like workshop. Like I'll go through how to write a plugin and like actually do some like coding up here while you all like also, you know, do that as well. And so I'd love it to be kind of like interactive, you know, ask questions, like stop me if something's confusing, raise your hand. So please do that. And yeah, so I'll get into it. So yeah, thank you also to our sponsors, just heard from them. And so a little bit about Playbook. I'll just kind of give you the story of how we got started on this. So I started working on Playbook with my co-founder Jessica. We met at this company, Open Door, started about 4 years ago, working on this. And pretty much the companies like Open Door, like we started when it was like a small company, right? Like a few dozen people, and it grew until it was like thousands of people. And any company that goes through that growth spurt finds a time when basically nobody can find anything anymore. And so you'll have like photo shoots and like illustrations and all this like creative stuff that's like flying around. At some point it becomes somebody's like full-time job just to like route people. Like, hey, where was that thing? Like, where was that latest photo shoot? And just send people to the right place. I think Open Door like lost half of its stuff when it migrated from Dropbox to Google Drive to save some money, so that was pretty sad. We talked to this other company, Bungalow, and had a kind of funny story where we talked to their creative director who apparently joined their company and then like 5 days afterwards realized that they had like an entire rebrand done before he even joined that he had never seen because the whole rebrand was sitting in a zip file in his predecessor's email inbox. So it was like hundreds of thousands of dollars of work, just kind of like through email, almost dropped on the floor. And so that's kind of what we started out setting out to solve. There's like this whole like creative process, creative organization, the workflow, and the status quo is kind of sad. I mean, the status quo for files is very much like Dropbox or like file sync. The status quo for like handing off or like client work is very much like email and zip files, which is pretty surprising. Definitely surprising to me when I got started. So we'll often say that we're kind of like Dropbox for design. If I could get help from my plant in the audience for a moment. Oh yeah, question?
Why is it Dropbox for design?
Why isn't Dropbox for design? I'm so glad you asked. So Dropbox was built in the start as kind of just like file sync, right? And that's what they crushed. That's what they do really well. And so when they launched in 2009, this is what their website looked like. So there's files on the internet. And then in 2017, this is what their website looks like. And it's still files on the internet. So basically, like if you want to work together collaboratively, and you want something more than just file sync, you're going to be clicking in and out of folders all the time. This isn't very visual, when all creative work is super visual. And then it's all really file-based. Even though the world is kind of changing, people are now working in Figma, that's like, you know, Cloud Document, Google Docs. More editors are coming up. If you want like a web-based photo editor, video editor, you can do more heavy stuff in the cloud. And so all of that doesn't really work when it's all just file sync. So that's where Playbook comes in. So what is Playbook exactly? Another pulse check. Raise your hand if you had heard of Playbook before this event. Cool, all right, I'm really excited to introduce to all of you. So Playbook is a creative workspace for all of your files. People use it in a lot of ways. So we're used by individuals for their own creative projects, by freelancers that use it to share work with their clients and do like handoff and like iteration and feedback. and by large teams that use it to organize like their whole team's media library. And so we are growing really fast. Within the creative industry, we have a ton of users. So I think this time last year, we only had, well, actually, it was only a lot at the time, felt like 100,000 users. And now we're already at 500,000 users, and still growing really fast every month. So that's kind of like across the creative industry, right? Like all kinds of, any kind of like visual creative work works really well in Playbook. So just to kick it off, like everything is just much more visual than if you think about like files or like Dropbox. So often when we'll get a new client, we'll like bring all their work in. The first thing that we'll hear is like, wow, I can see everything now. Because before they were just had the names, they're just clicking in and out of folders. There's a lot more. There's like commenting, collaboration. We have this sidebar where everything that that somebody does is going to show up in like an activity feed. You can keep up with changes, you can keep up with revisions. We have like really good commenting, some kind of version control. You can group things together, you can put new versions in there, you can comment on the old ones, you can click at certain positions. And we do sharing and publishing. So freelancers can make a portfolio, you can just like throw something together and share it with the client. You can do like handoff, make a shared link, and like really good like commenting and collaboration. And I'm dogfooding Playbook the whole time right now because this whole presentation is actually just from a Playbook shared link. So this is like the kind of thing that you might share with the client. And in fact, you all will be able to go to this link and like look at the slides and follow along for the second part, which is going to get more technical, and I don't know how well the text is going to show up. But that's what Playbook does today, which brings us to what plugins are and why we're here launching a plugin hackathon. So we do a lot, but we're a small team. You know, there's actually only 10 of us, which is always pretty surprising. People who've like used a lot of the product. And our users are constantly asking for more features, right? Like, hey, there's a new AI tool. How can you guys integrate with it? Can you like open this in like Photoshop, or open this in this brand new editor that's online now? Or can you have a tool that will like stitch together my PDFs for me, or do whatever other thing that our clients want? And we want Playbook to support all of that. You know, anything you can imagine that's part of your like creative process, your creative workflow, we want that to be possible to build. And so plugins are the way that anybody, like external developers, can write something that integrates really nicely with Playbook, that can add a lot of functionality, and can also be useful in its own right. And I'll get to that in a sec. So the kind of things you could do with plugins, you could write a plugin that takes something that was stored in Playbook and shares it to social media, converts between file types. You could imagine like add subtitles to a video. You could do some kind of like heavy like AI processing, use some super new AI thing and like generate new imagery, or generate like pull a file and like find the metadata from it and like save that back. External editors, all kinds of integrations. Basically how it works is that there's a call out to a plugin and then a call back. So in the screenshot on the left, if you're viewing a file in Playbook, there's like a range of buttons of things you can do, and the plugins will show up there. And if you click one, we basically call out to a plugin, which is written by an external developer, hosted elsewhere. And then that plugin will call back, maybe to save files into Playbook or to do something, some kind of action. And then Playbook kind of takes it again from there and like organizes everything. So in this case, like if you call out, maybe there's like a mid-journey thing that calls back, that's going to get organized already within our UI and the way that it works. So there's a lot of benefits to doing things this way. For one, it's way easier to write plugins. So if you wanted to make like a helpful kind of widget, or some kind of like an image transformer or a file converter, you don't have to toss up a whole website that does like upload and download and management. All you have to do is write that one piece. That's like, what is the thing you're trying to accomplish? And we'll have an app store for that where people can browse and find your plugin and actually make use of it. And then the other benefit is that people who are using this don't have to trust you with their entire everything. Because when we call out, we're only sending along the files that somebody wanted to operate on. And so if you're trying to write something that's helpful to people, it'll be much easier than if you're trying to get them to give you like full access to everything that they have. So more benefits to so we're kicking off our developer program today, is what we're kind of here to announce, and we're really happy you joined us for. And I think it's an exciting time to kick off because, like I mentioned, we're growing fast and have been for a long time. So if you write something that integrates with Playbook like this, you'll have access to these like 500,000 users that are using our tool. It's really easy to write plugins, at least we hope so. We'll find that out soon. And you can charge for your plugins. So you can set a price. If you're doing some kind of like fancy, like processing or AI tool, you can charge, and Playbook will take care of everything. We have a credit system, people can buy credits, and we'll pass on all of the, whatever you just chose to charge, back to you. And for the first 2 years of our program, we're gonna pass back 100% of whatever users are paying. And on top of that, we're probably gonna give away some free credits to our users because we'd like them to try the plugins, and we can just handle that. And then if that's not enough, that probably is enough, but in case it's not enough, we also have prizes for people that write plugins. So this is for this month, just for kicking off the program all of September. We're going to see what plugins get written, and then we'll have a competition, and we'll judge them at the end. So the third place prize will be $800, and then $900 for second, and $1,000 for first. And we've gathered a panel of super independent, unbiased members of our team. And that'll be the whole month of September. So tonight is just the kickoff. So with that, I wanted to show you a little bit about, okay, what are these things? What are plugins? And what's an example? So this is one of the first ones we wrote. This is a remove background plugin. And we didn't actually write the code to remove the background. It turns out there are tons of websites that do that. I'm sure you've all seen one. And so there's one called remove.bg that has a nice API. What our plugin does is it just gets a file as input, it calls remove.bg, and then it gets the file back and saves it back into Playbook. So, pretty simple. I'll just click on this. So what we're looking at here is, and I know it's a little washed out, so I apologize, I'll share the slides later, but there's a file in Playbook, and on the right there's a bunch of tools, there's like commenting there, other stuff that we provide, downloading, and then one of those little buttons at the right is the remove.bg button, which shows up because it was like installed into this workspace. So I'm just gonna play this video, and we'll click that button. So they click remove.bg. This one costs some credits, so you confirm that the credits are okay. It spins for a bit, and then there's the new file with removed background. So pretty cool. But what's even cooler is that the remove.bg plugin is very simple. It just takes in one file and writes back one file with the background gone. But we can be more fancy when it comes to the actual, what we're providing to our users. So for our users, we also have bulk actions. And in this example, I've selected 6 files at one time, and I'm gonna call remove.bg. And the Playbook system will just make 6 different calls. And so the plugin stays really simple, but anybody who uses it automatically gets all that bulk behavior and tons of power out of the box. So I just show that one. So multi-select is a pop-up. We'll click remove.bg, which is popped up there. It's gonna spin for a bit, and then we remove all the backgrounds. Which would be really cool if it was something super powerful. You wanna do like big rendering, something like that, 3D rendering, anything is possible. One last example, just so you can get an idea of the kind of things you can write. This is a plugin written by Mike, actually. Who's over there? That's him. This makes a GIF. So here are selected 5 images. And same deal, click GIF Creator. Spins for a little bit. And it's a GIF. Yeah. Cool. So that's kind of it for the first section where I wanted to talk about like what are we, what are plugins, how do they work overall. This next part I'm going to get into a bit about how to write plugins and the technical side. We'll start kind of kicking off the hackathon. You don't have to pay too close attention. I know it'll be hard to see this as well. Although I mentioned I'm demoing this just from like a Playbook link. So you can find that link here, and I recommend you do, so you can follow along on your computer and so you can see things up closer. So I'll give you all a minute. You've all been very polite not already having your computers out. It's great, I appreciate that. But also, I'm just going to show this as an overview, and then after this, we're going to do kind of like a workshop session. So I'll actually go through writing a plugin and like setting up the example code, and we can do that part together. So you don't actually have to follow along here, just if you want to. But if you're ready and you have a computer, so it's playbook.com/s/playbook/plugins2023. All right, I'm gonna get into a bit about how do these things work. So I mentioned before that it's kind of like a system where Playbook calls out to your external plugin, and then your plugin calls back to do some action, like creating a file. You can also create notes, you can open URLs. And so this is kind of how it works. Playbook is calling first, this is the green bubble, and you configure when you set up your plugin where Playbook should reach you. So basically the one key thing you need is this like invocation URL, is what we call it. So Playbook will call that URL that you configured with a unique token, and then some information about the files, which we call assets in our system. And then a callback URL, which is like how you call back to do an action. And then your plugin is the purple bubble. Whenever it wants, it will do some work on its own, asynchronously, and it'll call back to request an action. So in this case, it's going to call with an operation, which is create assets, and it's going to ask Playbook to make some assets with particular titles. I put a couple slides in here for more reference later. I'm not really going to get into all the details here. We have docs. But this is an example of what Playbook would send to a plugin. So when it specifies what assets are being requested to be operated on, those assets have like a token, they have a title, and they have a URL where you can access the file data for a limited time. And then when the plugin calls back, this is more interesting. There's 3 different things you can do. The most obvious one is you can create new files. It sounds simple. It's actually 2 steps, still pretty simple. But the part 1 is that you have to call back to say, I would like to make files. So basically making placeholders. And Playbook will respond to give you the placeholders and to give you upload URLs for each one. And then you upload to those upload URLs to fill in the file data. So that'd be how you create new files. You can create notes. That's simpler, it's just 1 step because there's no upload part. So for notes, you just call Playbook, you again say, I'd like to create assets, and they'll type notes, and the value is any HTML that you want. And then the third thing you can do is you can request that Playbook open a new tab for the user. And so to do that, you say the operation is open URL, and you pass it URL. And so the effect of that is that if somebody is using Playbook and they click some things and they click your plugin, it will just pretty quickly like just pop open the new tab that you requested. So that might be useful if you're trying to like do some work and then open in like an external editor. You can make that like a seamless transition. When your plugin gets called, it goes through a couple phases. I just wanted to call out the first phase is that like you got called, Playbook made a request to the endpoint you said. And the one thing to keep in mind is you have to return from there quickly. So you have to immediately return a 200 to say that you got it, like you acknowledged the request. And then after you did that response, the plugin should do its main work asynchronously, like in its its own separate thread. But for the async part, it can take as long as it wants. So it can do some heavy processing. It can call back, like over and over again. You can make more than 1 asset. You can open the URL later. So that part's all async. And then once you're totally done processing, call back 1 last time just to say that the plugin is done running. And so you call back with the status endpoint, and you say that the status was a success or a failure if the plugin, realized the file didn't fit, couldn't be operated on, something like that. And we'll show a loading spinner until you call back to say that it's done. There's a couple examples. This one I'm quite confident nobody can see these lines of code, but that's okay. Really just wanted this in here for reference later. This is a plugin that is kind of a hello world. What it does is it reads in an image, rotates it 90 degrees to the right, and then calls back to Playbook to save the rotated image. And I do think it's cool that the plugin is not that long. This is maybe, what, 30 lines of code or something? And this is what it does. Yeah, it gets called, it does the work, and it calls back with success at the end. And I have an even simpler example. This is a plugin that all it does is it gets sent a file, and then it opens that file in a new tab. So Playbook sends it a file, and it just immediately sends back to say, please do the open URL action. And this example code is also using our TypeScript library, which makes some of the things a little easier. You don't even have to worry about network requests if you use this. So here's how to get started. And again, we'll do this together in a little bit. But basically, first you want to make sure you'll have a developer account. That's what we were asking for on your way in. You probably signed up or dropped an email. We're going to be upgrading all of those people. First do the Playbook account, then we'll upgrade it to developer. And then you'll visit your account page, and that's where you can create plugins. When you create a plugin, you'll be asked stuff like the name of it, its description, but also very importantly, that invocation URL, which is where does your plugin, where do we call you? And then you can get started with our examples. Cool thing about developing plugins is that you can run them locally, and you can develop them against your actual Playbook account. So you can run, all the plugin examples have a quick start. If you run yarn dev, this is all Node and JavaScript, but you can pick any stack you want. Our examples are just Node and JavaScript. That'll start up an Express server, so your computer will basically start listening for calls. And then we just have a challenge of how do we get actual Playbook to call your computer, which doesn't have an address. So for that, we use a tool called ngrok. Raise your hand if you've used ngrok before or heard of it. Okay, cool. So what ngrok does is it takes something running on your computer, like a port or a server running, and exposes it to the broader internet. So anybody on the internet, if they know that endpoint, can call something running on your computer. And it's conveniently really easy to run. It's just one command. You run ngrok, HTTP, and then the port, 3000, and that gets you a public URL. And then back in your configuration, you go pop that in as the URL. And this is pretty cool because then you can have an actual Playbook account where you've uploaded files to, and your plugin shows up in sandbox mode, and you call it, and it calls your computer. And then you can log and debug and figure out what you want to do. So that's local development. Don't worry about deploying it yet, but just as a heads up, in case people are wondering, once it comes to deploying for a wider audience and not just running on your computer, you can deploy this in any kind of serverless Lambda kind of way. So we have cloud functions, we have Lambda, we have examples of both of those in the example code that we provide. But then, this is all just examples. Really all you need is an endpoint that we call you at, and that could be any stack of your choosing, any language of your choosing. So to get started, what you need to do first is make sure you have a Playbook account. So if you don't yet, go to playbook.com and sign up. We need that to make you a developer account. Then join Discord. There's a link here. You can also find a link at the bottom of our homepage. And we have special channels for the hackathon, which is where we'll be discussing and getting help and stuff like that. And then message us either in Discord or email support@playbook.com so we can upgrade you to a developer account so that we have access to the plugin system. And then after that, we have docs. There's a tiny URL here, pd plugin docs, and then these slides. So if you're already feeling ready to go, this all made total sense, and you want to just start hacking, go ahead, won't stop you, that'd be great. And you can find the docs there, and there'll be a lot more details on the API. But if you'd like to just follow along with the workshop, we're going to pause for 5 minutes here, grab a drink, make sure everyone has a developer account, is ready to go, and reconvene. And then I'm just going to keep talking and go through the whole setup process and invite you to follow along, just step by step. So choose your own adventure. We'll grab a drink, and I'll see you back here in 5. Thanks.